Hello, I'm Sarah Lister from Sheffield Digital, and today I'm talking to Sophie Wendell, who is a software engineer at Zoo Digital. Sophie, why did you choose to become a software engineer?
I guess at first it wasn't like a conscious choice. It was more that I'd dabbled in some software stuff, some programming and coding, and found that I really enjoyed it. Because I think originally the idea I had about becoming a software developer was that you had to be a super geek and interested in tech from a really young age and all of that stuff. But what I found is it's actually at its core just problem solving, and being creative, and it's a very like mentally stimulating and challenging job. So while I enjoyed my previous role, I was finding that I wanted something where I had to put more thought into it that would kind of test me. And being a software engineer is perfect for that because you're constantly problem solving, and that's actually really fun.
What was your previous role?
Previously, I was the languages manager, but it was in a translation team, so I'd been coordinating kind of translation of scripts and subtitles with the translators that we used.
And that was within the same company?
Yeah, that was at the same company, and because it's so I work for Zoo Digital, and it's a software company first and foremost, but it also does kind of post-production with subtitles and dubbed audio for film and TV. So it's got both sides to it, and I entered on the production side, which was creating subtitles, and I was, because my degree was in languages, I got into the translation team, which was scheduling translations of things with kind of remote translators all around the world, which is really interesting work, and you got to talk to loads of amazing people. But it was, I think, for me, I wasn't having to put as much thought into it as I would want from a job, as enjoyable as it was. So the fact that I worked in a company where we had a big software team that I could kind of talk to for advice and kind of get an insight into what software engineering was actually like was like a big benefit for me, and it definitely helped me settle on software engineering as the career that I wanted to move into.
What does a typical day doing your job look like?
That the answer to that would depend. It changes kind of every day depending on where we are in the sprint cycle. So at the start of the sprint, for example, we can be in a lot of meetings discussing the design and functionality of new features that we want to put in. Then I'll go away and put together a design document for the new feature. I'll be doing mock-ups of what it should look like, describing the things that would need to change or what I'd introduce in the code base. And then we start working on the actual development of that. And that is just a lot of coding, a lot of problem solving, writing tests for the software. But also when you're doing that, there's a lot of talking going on. You need to ask people in your team who've worked on the product who know about a specific area or what something does. You still need to, there's a lot of communication at that point. So some days will be spent, even though I'm in the coding phase, they'll be spent kind of speaking to someone for the whole day to figure something out. And then when that's done, you go on to bug fixing. Hopefully there won't be too many, but sometimes there are quite a few. But that in itself is fun. It's kind of like short tasks, like self-contained tasks that you get to do. You get to kind of test out the issue and then figure out a solution to that problem. So yeah, and any of those stages could take any amount of time. So it's really varied, and I guess there's a lot of different things that I do as my job.
How has Zoo Digital supported your career development and progression?
So, I mean, initially they were really good in supporting me with the career change. You know, I talked to them and mentioned that I was considering moving across into software development, and they let me take the application test for a software engineer. I got to talk to some of the devs in R&D and ask them questions about things that I didn't understand, and they were really supportive with that. And then now that I'm in the R&D team, we get 1 day a month, which is a development day. So we kind of get to pick something that we want to spend the day studying or working on. It can be like an online course. It can just be messing around with some new technology that you've discovered, or we even get the option to spend the day working on a side project. If we've got something that we're doing on the side, you can take a day to work on that. Because obviously the benefits are there for the company as well, but it means we end up knowing more. If we can take a day a month to learn something, then that's really good. And beyond that, we get tickets for kind of like online, what are they called? Seminars, the big online conferences, those kind of things, and festivals where you can watch speakers talking about a range of things. So there's a lot of support there. Yeah, it's been really good.
What are the most important skills you need to do your job?
I would say first and foremost is being a good communicator. Because you're working as a software engineer, you're working with the software testers, you're working with the product managers who are then working with the clients and the stakeholders. You're working with other developers who are on the same product as you, or maybe even a feature that works alongside yours. So the whole time you need to make sure that you're on the same page with people about what's expected from what you're building, from software testing, maybe what they are going to try and break, what they're going to be looking out for. And from the other developers, you need to be able to communicate what you've done so that they can work around it, or include your work in their stuff. So you definitely have to. It's not as isolated a job as I think a lot of people think. Communication is one. Enjoying problem solving is another. Like not seeing those barriers as things that just stop you. You just find a way to work around them. So you have to enjoy that challenge. And then besides that, I think you have to kind of maybe just be a bit confident in reaching out to people and saying when you don't understand things, because that's, even for the most experienced developers, there's always something you won't understand, or something that's new that somebody else knows more about. So, if you're someone that maybe doesn't like to ask for help, that's something you might want to work on. But I think, and for me as well, that was something that maybe I didn't do much of at the start, and I've learned that actually my life is a lot easier. Things go a lot more smoothly and a lot quicker if I do just ask, as once I've kind of exhausted my attempts on something.
What degree did you do at university, and are there any transferable skills that you've brought from that to do your job now?
So my degree was actually in Russian studies, which was, it was mostly studying the language. For me, it was from a beginner's standpoint, like I hadn't done Russian before. But alongside that, there was, the culture and history and media aspects that most languages degrees cover. But I would say that there is a transferable skill there, in that I kind of approached learning Russian at university in the same way that I approached learning programming, which was that I find that it's a lot easier you understand something a lot better if you actively use it. So when you're studying a language, if you can actually talk to people, construct sentences, try and analyze a short text in the language you're learning, all those kinds of things, just doing stuff with whatever you've learned, even if it's not very much, then you kind of end up innately understanding it a lot better. And I think the same can be applied to learning programming. You know, you can do these online kind of courses, and you'll understand the content, but after that, for me anyway, I think you really have to just go and try and build something, even if it's tiny, to really understand, like see what issues you come up against, and just see how things work for yourself. So yeah, I'd say that's definitely a very transferable skill.
Where do you think is the best place for people to learn and develop the skills that you've mentioned? So the tech skills, and then maybe the other skills like problem solving that are linked with that.
So I think people they should look at taking kind of two approaches to it. So one would be using whatever resources you can find, and pick ones that suit your learning style. So I know some people who are learning to code who much prefer watching YouTube videos of people talking through something, because that's how they learn best. Whereas other people prefer to work through an online course, or build something from a tutorial that teaches them from scratch. So, and there are loads of online, really, really good online resources. A lot of them are free. So I would say use those, pick one that suits you. And whilst you're doing that, try and in whatever way you feel comfortable with, get involved in the community of just programming in general, but also people who are learning to code. And there are loads of communities for that. And they're really friendly. Like, experienced programmers are nearly always super happy and really keen to help out people who are learning. But then if to know lots of people who are also on that same journey as you, like starting out learning programming from scratch, it's quite nice to have that support, because they'll understand, it's not necessarily an easy thing to learn by yourself. So if you can talk to them and kind of get that support from people who have also potentially lost motivation at points, or struggled with something that they found really, really difficult, then that's a great help. And besides that, there's the networking element. So a lot of people will know that there's a job coming up at a place that they work at, I think there's that networking, but then also there are coding groups pretty much everywhere now. I know that Sheffield has at least one or two, and they're still online. I think at the moment they do like code workshops online, but generally when things get back to normal, they have in-person coding events where you can turn up with your laptop and work on whatever it is you're doing, and there will be experienced programmers there who you can call over for help. So that's also a really good thing, I think. Basically kind of look at the technical side of things, but also don't forget to socialize.
I think people will be looking forward to that.
Yeah.
What is the most challenging part of your role?
For me still, it's definitely probably knowing when to ask for help. I can maybe be a bit stubborn sometimes and think, no, I'm going to solve this myself, I can do it. But actually, a lot of the time, I understand things better when I talk to someone who does really, truly understand it. So for me, that's kind of an issue, is like, where do you draw the line? When do you say, now's the time to ask for help? So that's maybe a big challenge. I mean, there's also the obvious answer of something super complicated that I'm working on. That's always a challenge. But yeah, I'd say it's not the programming side of it, probably.
And have you noticed that more with being able to ask people? Do you find that has changed since you've been maybe working from home a bit more during 2020, like not being in that office environment as much?
Yeah, I mean, I guess because when you're in an office together, you can kind of like hop over to someone's desk, just quickly ask them or get them to show you. Whereas now you kind of have to, because you can't see if someone's busy, you can't see if they're kind of already engaged in something. There can be a bit of a delay. It takes maybe a bit more coordination to do that. And I think some people are quite wary of interrupting someone because they can't see if they're in the middle of something. So people are a bit wary about popping up and asking for help. So I guess that's something that maybe people will get used to after a while. Like maybe we'll figure out systems to better show this stuff. But yeah, again, it's just something that we have to, I guess, adapt to, really.
Be braver.
Yeah, just put it out there.
And be
Say,
patient.
I need help, please. Being patient is the main thing, I think, with everyone working from home. Patience is key.
Absolutely. And what do you find the most enjoyable aspect of your job?
Without a doubt, it is, finally figuring out a solution to something that you've been struggling with for a while, or, maybe for a feature you're working on, you've had to use some new technology that you've never worked on before. And actually getting that to work and figuring out how that works is an amazing feeling. And then second to those kind of problem solving wins is just seeing the thing that you've built actually working and being used by people.
That does sound very satisfying.
Yeah, it is.
And finally, where would you advise someone to start when considering a career as a software engineer?
I guess I would probably say that because being a software engineer, that is front and back end. I think maybe so there's kind of different strains of software engineer, I would say. There are some that are more focused on front end, and I guess you would call those web developers or software developers maybe. But I think people use the term interchangeably. So I just want to kind of say that there are maybe different types of software development and engineering that you can go through. So I would say that people should experiment with different courses, try out different technologies, different programming languages, try out some front end stuff, try out some back end stuff, and see what really clicks with you. You might find that a particular programming language that you've done a course in you absolutely hate. It happens. People definitely have favorites and least favorites in programming languages, so that's perfectly normal. And if you've done one and you quite like the challenges but you hate the language, then try a different one. But also, yeah, just explore kind of, I guess, the different flavors of programming. See what one fits, and then try and find tutorials to actually build something using that. And there'll be loads of those. Look at different resources. Like I said, some people learn better from a YouTube video, whereas others prefer to just read, the documentation for something. So do those, and also look up maybe local programming groups, some for newbie coders, and just, even if you don't interact with the community, just see what other people are saying, kind of the things that they're struggling with or the things that they're talking about. I think it's really useful information to have, and it's quite reassuring as well.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a really good approach. It sounds interesting because you get to explore lots of different options and, like you say, find out how you enjoy learning. I'm definitely a YouTuber type. I like to take the shortcut as quickly as possible.
See, I just can't get on with YouTube videos. Yeah, it's weird, but I think if you picked the wrong one for you, then you would maybe struggle a bit more than you would. So I think it's really important to mention that, because some people get, if I was having to learn from watching YouTube videos, I would hate it, whereas you would absolutely love it. So
yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you so much, Sophie.
Thank you.